Hey, I'm Carson Slovak.
And I'm Grant McFarland.
We are from Atrium Audio, and we're going to show you today how you can use ControlHub on basically everything in your mix and come up with something that sounds great. Okay, so what I've done here is I've actually opened up an old session of a Candlebox song called We. It's on their album Wolves, and it's a really cool song. It's kind of Radiohead-ish. There's a lot going on in it. There's a lot of dynamic in the drums and the guitar, and the vocal is really raw and kind of crazy sounding. And basically I just kind of I mixed this actually all in the box originally during the pandemic when we couldn't get into the studio we were working out of. So, you know, all totally in the box originally, and I'm really pleased with how the final record came out. And I kind of went through this session and replaced all of my plugins with ControlHub and tried to kind of get it into the same spot mix-wise, and I'm pretty happy with the results. So I'll just start going through and showing you guys what I did. First, we'll start with the drums. Let me just solo this folder. We've got all our drum tracks here. We've got a kick track. Wasn't originally happy with the kick sound that was recorded, so I fully replaced the kick. The snare drum has gates on each of these tracks that are being triggered by this MIDI track here. And then they all go to this bus that I'm pulling the volume down on. And then we've got our toms. They're all cut out. We've got some close mics, hi-hat, ride, china. They're all going to a bus together. And then we've got an overhead track and a room track. So I'll just start with the kick, and I will disengage what I have on the drum bus. And here's what we got. So that's the kick we ended up using in the song. And in ControlHub here, we've opened up the Atrium Audio Rock Kick preset. So immediately you can see that, you know, there's some low mid stuff, some cloudiness that was carved out. It's a little brighter. There's some compression going on, some FET compression. We can bypass this and listen to the AB. So pretty cool, pretty quick starting point. All of these presets in our pack, I think you can approach them as decent starting points. Obviously, you're going to need to tailor the details and fine tune it and really dial it to work with whatever source audio you have. But I found generally, as you know, these things go, these are pretty great starting points. And we'll move on to the snare. Let me solo this up. So once again, I've got these gates here on the snare tracks. Here's what they sound like without them. And here's what they sound like with them. And again, I'm keying these gates from a MIDI track, so the gates aren't accidentally going to open up with like a really loud cymbal hit or a tom hit or something like that. It's a really good way to zero in on exactly when you want the gates to open and when you don't want them to. So that's our raw snare gated, and then I'm sending these all to bus with ControlHub on it, and we'll just engage that and see what the difference that makes. So as you see, we've got the rock snare preset pulled up. We've got some color going on here, just a little bit of saturation. We've got some compression, again, a FET style compressor. So the cool thing about these individual presets in our expansion pack is that the EQ moves we've made are kind of baked in. So you have a zero starting point on the master EQ, and you can, you know, tailor that to your specific, you know, situation. Looks like originally you can see up here it lists what the original processing chain was for each of these presets. Looks like I was using a metric halo compressor, SSL channel, some fab filter. So continuing on, we've got kind of an instant snare sound here. I'm not going to mess with this obviously because I've already kind of dialed it for this particular snare. So I'm pretty happy with that. I'm going to move on for now, and we can check out the toms. And once again, I've just kind of opened this old session up and went and swapped out whatever was on these tom tracks with ControlHub. And we've made 3 tom presets in our drum folder here, and made one for a 10-inch tom, a 12-inch tom, and a 16-inch tom. Now, again, these are just kind of rough starting points. These just tend to kind of be decent EQ curves that work well for these particular size drums. So you might have a 10-inch tom recording that is tuned differently, that needs to have the EQ kind of adjusted a little bit, but for these drums, they're a pretty good starting point. So let's listen. So I'll just play the last little bit of that. So they sound pretty good. I'm going to engage ControlHub on all of these, and then we'll check out what's going on processing wise. Yeah, again, you know, a little bit more polished, a little scooped. You know, you got some of that low mid stuff scooped out of there. You've got some harmonic stuff going on here with the saturation. Looks like I did use R bass on this, so there's some low frequency subharmonics being generated there. I'll A/B it once again, off first. And then with it engaged. So those sound pretty nice to me. I'm gonna move on to, actually, I'm just gonna move on to the overheads. So we'll see what those sound like without anything. Yeah, so again, you know, we've got some saturation, a little bit of compression, and again, these will, you know, have to be dialed depending on what your source audio sounds like. Let's check out the room mics. Now in this situation, I think most of this record was tracked just kind of live in the room, so there's amp bleed in the room mics, you know, which is actually pretty minimal considering when things are tracked all together. There tends to be a lot of bleed, but this isn't an insurmountable amount, so I didn't have to do any, you know, tricks or anything in this to get good room sound originally, even though there's you know, bleed of the guitars going on. But once again, I've pulled up the Atrium Audio Rock Room preset, and you can see we've got some compression, FET compression, big surprise. Big fan of that. And that's one of the things that I really like about ControlHub is that they nailed a lot of these compression curves. You know, it feels good. It feels like what I originally used to get the drum room sounding the way I wanted. And I'm not going too incredibly hard on this. And then once again, you got your EQ over here. Okay, so we've kind of dialed in all the individual channels of the drums to where they sound pretty good. Going up to the drum bus, I've got, big surprise, an instance of ControlHub. Here's what the drums sound like with it bypassed. So you'll notice a few things. I tend to just kind of squash the hell out of drums and call it a day. Pretty simplistic in that regard with my approach to drum bus compression. Stuff like this where it's like rock music, guitar, drums, you know, I like a big compressed open drum sound. And I found the best way to achieve that is just to kind of gain stage your cymbal mics to your shell mics appropriately and send it all to a bus and squash the hell out of it and then adjust things until it sounds good. So I've kind of baked in that approach to this preset in our ControlHub Expansion Pack, and I can play that for you and you can hear what the drums sound like with the processing on. So when it's bypassed, you'll hear, you know, the shells are poking out a lot more, the snare in particular. That's because gain staging going into a certain type of drum bus compression, I like to have the snare hitting it way harder than everything else. So you get that, you know, that big open smack kind of sound, but all the other stuff isn't being compressed to hell. And making it just sound like a mess. So I tend to mix the snare into my compressor a little louder than everything else. And you can see how much gain reduction is happening when the snare hits. And that's, again, you just kind of have to dial it in by taste. I've dialed this to where it sounds pretty good for me in this context of the song. So I will leave it there, and that is my drum bus processing. So once again, without and with. So everything sounds a lot bigger, a lot more kind of in your face, and I dig that. So we will move on from drums now and go to bass. And for the bass guitar in this track, it looks like they gave us 3 different amp signals. So I pulled up Atrium Audio Clean Rock Bass. Let's see what that does to it. And you'll see we've got a little bit of EQ baked in, and we're limiting it a little bit. I'm going to apply some compression to this. Cool, sounding pretty good. Guitar wise, we've got, so I believe they used a bunch of different mics for each guitar track. So I have those all grouped and going to buses, and then they all go up to this guitar group. And I've already got some effects and stuff dialed in, so I'm gonna leave those alone and just focus on processing the group. Let's see what we got. Yep, so we're cleaning up the low end a lot, the low mids, brightening them up a little bit. And we're doing the same kind of thing with these leads. These leads are kind of, there's a lot of the tracks of this one. brighten them up a little bit with the EQ. Let's listen to both of these guitar buses together. So what we've done is we've cleared up a lot of space, for the other elements to have their place, so the guitar isn't kind of dominating those ranges of frequencies. Let's check out the acoustic guitar. And we've got a single acoustic guitar track and a room mic that I've just kind of balanced together, and then I'm sending to this bus. It's got ControlHub. We pulled up our acoustic preset. Let's see what that does to it. Cool, so we've got a little bit of saturation going on. We're compressing it very, very slightly. We've cleaned up the low end and we've brightened up the top end a little bit. So yeah, I'm happy with that as well. Let's move on. I think all we've got in this effects folder is like a little intro thing and then a piano. So I've went ahead and put ControlHub on the piano track. Let's see what they gave us. Yep, pretty easy. So let's see what we got instrumentally. Mute the vocal bus for now. So we've got our drum group. Which brings us to the mix bus. Typically how I'll set things up, I'll do some mix bus compression on just the instrumental track and then send the vocals post compression so the vocals aren't messing with the vibe of the instrumental. So I pulled up Mix Bus Rock preset in our expansion pack. Let me bypass it first. Or actually, let me play it first since that's what we've been listening through. And then we'll bypass it and see what it's been doing. So what we've got going on here is some saturation. We've got an SSL bus comp style compressor that's hitting probably around 3 or 4 dB of gain reduction. You really see it on snare hits. That's kind of tends to be the pokiest part of the mix pre mix compression, because what that'll do is kind of in a pleasing way pull everything else down, but you can overcook it really quickly. So this first preset is pretty subtle. And then we've got an EQ curve baked in, which you can adjust here. And let's check it out again. First bypassed. So that's sounding pretty great to me. Now let's go down here to vocals and check those out. This track, actually a pretty spare vocal group of tracks. Again, this band is very much like, let's kind of get a live vibe, you know, let's not do a ton of layers and do a bunch of vocal lining. And actually, these two tracks down here, I believe, are just duplicates of what's up here to mix in an effect that I have specifically dialed in, which I'll leave for now.
And the delay throws as well. So I think we only have 2 main vocal tracks.
Yeah, I think there was only 2 main vocal tracks in this song. And you'll see I've like copy and pasted some pieces of this vocal track down here with just delay on here at 100% mix. So what that'll do is it gives you a track that's dedicated just to delay throws. So if you have like one word in a vocal performance that you want to have a delay throw on it, you just copy it and put it down there, and then you can adjust your delay time. But actually, before we get to delay stuff, let's just solo a main vocal and see what's going on here. So here's without ControlHub.
Bending never made us weak, but...
And then engaged, we've got our rock vocal preset. Let's see what that sounds like.
Bending never made us weak, burning.
Cool. So let me actually disengage this.
Bending.
This is a cool, like, kind of slap back effect. I really like this effect for Candlebox in particular, just because his voice has a really interesting interaction with this kind of effect. And I've always loved, you know, I tend to overdo this effect on a lot of his vocals, but that is kind of baked into this preset, rock vocal, because it's the recording that I derived this preset from. So again, we've got some saturation, some compression, some EQ, and let's A-B it one more time.
Bending never made us weak, burning.
Oh yeah, and I've also got this instance of ControlHub on the main vocal bus, which is just adding a little bit of EQ and a little bit of color over here. So I'll play the vocal with both of these bypassed.
Bending.
Seems like they really crushed it with some compression on the way in, which is cool. Sounds good. And then here it is with this on the individual track.
Bending never made us weak,
Sounds cool. And then here it is with the bus processing on the vocal bus.
bending never made us weak.
So sounding pretty cool. And as you can see, I've applied this same, this one has a 100% delay and a quarter note delay. This is the same rock vocal setting over here, and on these tracks I just have this additional effect plugin on these tracks down here to get a specific effect that I wanted. But let's listen to the whole thing all together and see what we got. So now what I'll do is I'll just A/B it with the actual album mix, and I only have a mastered track here, so I've brought the volume on it down pretty considerably because I'm not limiting this mix right now for this demonstration, but I'll just kind of volume match it, and then we can A/B to the actual version that's on the record. So here is what's on the record. And then here is a version with basically all ControlHub processing. And now what I'll do do is I will deactivate all ControlHub and we'll listen to it that way. So it's pretty incredible to me that I was able to essentially replace almost every plugin in this session with an instance of ControlHub, and just using very quick presets from the Atrium audio pack, we were able to almost replicate the original album mix. I think that that's incredible. So much power in one plugin is very impressive, and it's crazy to me that we can kind of go through very quickly and you know, make something that sounds like a cohesive mix with just ControlHub. So, you know, I'm super impressed and definitely stoked to be part of this and to be included in such an awesome new idea.
Listening to everything with ControlHub off and then hearing it on, it was like the entire mix. Everything.
Yeah.
It's just incredible what it can do. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little different from the original, but I mean, it's pretty much there, you know.
I mean, the fact you can get a whole mix out of one plugin is
Yeah,
powerful.
for
It's
sure.
cool.